Hello, this is the Coach and Benway podcast. I'm Coach Redpill. I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Benway, and today we're going to be talking about, oh God, the mess that is Theresa May's cabinet. Benway, why don't you fill us in? Because I'm not on top of it, and I know you are.
Well, it's an interesting question as to how long the Theresa May cabinet will stand up, given all the exits that are going on. But those of you interested in paying attention, earlier, or shall I say late last week, Theresa May made her great pronouncement of, hey, we have a Brexit plan, which is effectively no Brexit whatsoever. In name only leaving, stick with the rules of the EU for time immemorium and all of the other intricacies involved. Okay, so that's her going forward plan of saying, yeah, we delivered on everything Brexit, you voted for. Yeah. In other words, nothing.
Yeah.
As a result, the sieve of people leaving has started. David Davis, who is the cabinet minister responsible for Brexit, decided, fuck off, I'm going.
Yeah.
This is not what we wanted. Yeah. And then two other ministers whose name escapes me, but basically were pro-Brexit folks have gone. And so now in my mind, it's a question of, when does Boris Johnson leave? Because if Boris leaves, she has no government.
Yeah, and what she'll probably do, if I had to guess, is just give him a lot of concessions in order to keep him on board, keep him happy. That's the only move that she has open to her. And I think that there are... I mean, it's surprising. Theresa May has proven herself to be one of the worst politicians ever. I mean, really, she delivered a catastrophic election, which she should have won. She snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, for crying out loud, in the, 2017 election. And now, she's just, she has all the cards, okay? I mean, my point has always been about Brexit is that she has all the cards, Britain has all the cards, because they are a net importer of European goods. They have a negative balance of trades with the European Union. If that is the case, when the numbers are big enough, the person you owe money to or you are indebted to, he's your bitch. Basically, right? I mean, you, Benway, you know enough about finance and stuff to know that this is the case. You owe a bank enough money, you can do whatever the fuck you want to that bank. You owe some other country enough money, that other country will have to jump through any hoop you want to keep you happy, to keep you paying. But what did Theresa May do? She acted like she's subservient to the EU. She bought the Kool-Aid, or drank the Kool-Aid rather. I mean, that's my opinion about it.
Well, the thing is, we know, here's my take on this. We knew from the get-go that she was pro-EU. That was how she voted prior to the election, or not election, but that referendum. She was then basically put in charge as a result of political maneuverings and conflicts between three parties, Michael Gove, Boris Johnson, and herself. In other words, you had two Brexiteers fighting each other for the leadership position, and she, surreptitiously comes in and says, I'll be the mediating factor.
Right.
We knew that there was no way that she was going to be able to negotiate in good faith, even if she ultimately believed that she was going to deliver on Brexit, because she didn't have it in her heart to do it.
Right.
So in my mind, I have to be brutally honest. I'm like, frankly, Michael Gove and Boris Johnson, more so Boris, this is on you. You guys should have been one of you should have been the leader. You actively both campaigned for it, and yet you decided, we'll compromise for her to save whatever party face, what have you. That sealed the fate that they're now in.
Well, I always think it was Michael Gove, because remember he was supposed to go to that hotel and endorse Boris Johnson, and he failed to show up, and Johnson realized that he wouldn't have enough votes to win. I think that Michael Gove was the one most responsible for this catastrophic Theresa May government. Do you think that her government is going to last after these defections?
I think if Boris goes, then she will not survive. I think with these defections...
Even with Boris staying.
Not enough, because Boris is enough of a compromiser to keep it alive, limping on. Don't underestimate the degree to which the British make do with their own failures. They still have a pride. They still have a pride of craftsmanship in a country that's literally collapsing around it, and that get offended if you suggest otherwise. So if Boris decides to stick with it, well, then sorry, this whole country is useless.
Because my thinking had always been that we'd get to an election with Corbyn. Corbyn would win, and we'd have a catastrophic Corbyn government for 5 years. and potentially Rees-Mogg would sweep in and win the day. You think that that might be accelerated because of these events?
An election is certainly going to be accelerated from these events. I honestly don't know how it's going to play out. Compared to Theresa May, there's a chance that even Jeremy Corbyn could potentially deliver a better Brexit deal than her, because this is just basically no deal.
No, no, no.
And
It's worse
Corbyn,
than no deal. It's worse than no deal. It's basically no deal masquerading as a deal. That. I mean,
yeah, but
no
when
exit
you say
rather. No
I'm
exit.
sorry, you say masquerading as if someone was fooled by this. I'm sorry, for a masquerade to work, someone has to be convinced. Oh, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, nobody's fooled by this.
So,
It's just so disappointing. It's just so disappointing that they had all the cards in 2017 when she called the election. It was 2017, right? She called the election. She had all the cards. When she called the election, she had all the cards. All she had to say is, Brexit and fuck it. That was all she had to say. And just, a little bit rah-rah Britannia and shit like that. And she would have swept. But no, she put all kinds of stupid stuff. She is saying that she was going to in the proposal that she was going to increase the costs for elderly people. Are you insane? I mean, even if you ultimately have to increase money, taxes on elderly people, you don't fucking campaign on that, for crying out loud. This is democratic politics 101. Oh, God.
yeah, well, independent of the manifesto, which I still have my this one socialist dweeb I always have to listen to is trying to argue. It was then the socialist manifesto is more compelling, and that was his argument for ignore that, all of that. It's all bullshit. Here's the real deal. She can't campaign to save herself. She's never been a campaigner. She's barely an administrator, and we can see how shitty she is at that. The other added element that really threw her into a rut was her whole response to the that concert terrorist activity, which happened in the middle of the campaign, and she came across like a fucking idiot again. And she, everything was underlined again that they would sooner, the Ariana Grande concert, I believe.
Yeah.
And then everything was underlined after that she would spend much more effort attacking people who criticized Islam than actual people who were going to attack people going to concerts. So she sealed her fate with that, as far as I'm concerned. She put herself in a position that an average person in the Midlands, who frankly would be comfortable with at least just delivering on a solid Brexit message, realized that we can't trust her just to handle basic shit. So even if she did pull us out of Brexit, what the fuck is she going to do unimpeded?
Yeah.
So I think that's what cost her the margins. I mean, like my response, and the thing that made me laugh at that last election, I said, it's an election where everybody lost and nobody resigned, save for the guy who was running the Liberal Democrats. And not because he didn't resign because he lost. He resigned because he was a Catholic and he thought that being Catholic and a politician was too difficult for him, and he didn't want to have the complications of it.
That was Nicholas Clegg's justification.
No, Nicholas Clegg was gone before that. Nick Clegg not a Catholic.
Yeah, I was
Nick Clegg is a fuck up, but he's not a Catholic.
Yeah, no. Who was it?
No, I forgot his successor, but it was.
Okay.
I'm going to look it up.
I'll take your word for it. But look, I look at Theresa May as this. She has failed upward. She has been a fuck up in everything that she's ever done. She's sort of like the Diane Abbott of the Conservative Party. The only difference is that, at least Diane Abbott has the excuse that she fucked her way to the top by being the old bump and grinder for Corbyn back in her uni days, right? There's not even that excuse insofar as the Conservative Party is concerned, insofar as Theresa May, because she is just a fuck up. She was a disastrous Home Secretary who didn't do shit about immigration when she had the opportunity. Then as Prime Minister, she's more of a fuck up. And there's this other issue. A lot of these fuck up governments, like Merkel, like Macron, like what's her face, May, like Nicola Sturgis in Scotland, they don't have any children. Do you think that really plays such a decisive factor? Because a lot of people say that if you don't have skin in the game, i.e., if you don't have children who are going to be living in the society that you're creating, then you're more cavalier about it. You're more willing to do stupid things that might hurt people in the long run, your people in the long run. Do you agree with that? Because I'm tending to agree that it's true.
Well, it's certainly possible, and it certainly suggests attitudes above and beyond, whether or not you have skin in the game. It's manifests the attitude about, oh, we the wealthy liberal democracies overpopulate everything. We should just stop having children. That ties into other things. I can't necessarily say historically that if you don't have children, you're not going to be a great leader. I think of Alexander the Great. Obviously, he had no children.
Yeah, but he died
that
young.
doesn't, and he died young. But still, nevertheless, it doesn't. He was still effectively the leader, and he had he wasn't doing activities to create children. So there was that. The Roman.
I thought he did
emperors,
have a female mistress.
he had a mistress at the very end, but the degree to which she displaced or did not displace Patroclus is a matter of open speculation.
Mm-hmm.
The other element, a lot of the Roman emperors technically didn't have children. They identified a successor, and that was how they proceeded. So I can't definitively say that is always the case, but I do think in our particular case, it's tied to a plethora of other attitudes, which unfortunately do us no good.
Yeah, because I'm just Kipper Central had a letter that it was basically screenshots of a computer claiming that it was a letter that Theresa May was going to give on July 5th to her cabinet, basically outlining the proposal for a second referendum, basically creating a deal and putting that deal to a vote, a popular vote, which I thought was just, what exactly is the point of that? You already have the first referendum. It's done. It's decided. Move forward. You have the constitutional authority. You have a deal, put it in front of Parliament and have it voted on by Parliament. But the government has a clear, not mandate, order by the people, a popular demand to carry out Brexit. What the fuck is the problem? What is the problem with these fucking people? Oh, man, I don't understand, because I tend to be very decisive. Even when I realize that I have to carry out something that I find distasteful or just something that I'm not 100% on, I just decide, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to grit my teeth and carry it out. Why couldn't the Theresa May government do it? I mean, I understand that her heart wasn't into it and the whole thing. But it's that, see, the way to win an election, way to win future elections, to maintain political power, in this particular case, is to carry out the will of the people. She must have known that presenting this soft Brexit option, which is really no option at all, would alienate big swaths of her own cabinet and potentially destabilize her own government. She must have known this. I mean, not particularly.
You underestimate the ability of someone with a lot of weight on their shoulders who's incapable of misreading the tea leaves. Think about the chain of events from the perspective of a Theresa May who did not go into that first referendum, thinking it was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that referendum passes by approximately, 4 points difference of the vote. So she goes, okay, it's a majority, but a narrow one. She then goes into, the whole I'm very firm on delivering Brexit. Then she goes into that election, which, as I said, was complicated by a number of factors that are not included that are not directly tied to Brexit.
Yeah, but directly tied to her personality.
But hold on a sec. I got to make a point. She loses her majority.
Yeah.
She has to deal with another group in order to deliver on that. It's very easy for someone who's easily confused, who's an idiot, who didn't really believe in Brexit in the first place, to have advisors who are also, frankly, like her Chancellor of the Exchequer, who also didn't believe in it, to whisper to her, you see, this is a sign that the hard Brexit really didn't work, because they convinced themselves that they campaigned on that. That, of course, wasn't entirely true, but that's what they convinced themselves. So they probably are telling themselves, this softer version is probably more in line, given everything else that happened, as to what we think really matters. It's very easy to see how someone thinks like that, but it's also fundamentally a result of inbreeding thought of people who had no business being in charge of that government in the first place.
Yeah, I see your point. You're basically saying that it should have been Brexiteers, because they were the ones with a mandate, and not this individual, because she's a fucking idiot. Good God. I mean, you cannot fuck things up as badly as she has. I was about to say, you cannot fuck things up as badly as she has by accident, but
Well,
I don't
remember,
want to get
this
all
is also
Manchurian candidate on you, man.
well, regardless of the Manchurian candidate, it's an objective truth that this is the European Union's modus operandi, which is if a member state votes in a way we think is incorrect, we make them vote again.
Yeah,
This has happened before with the
yeah,
ratification of the Lisbon Treaty,
yeah. Which
a
is
few other times as
Yeah, it was
well.
the EU Constitution, which they got BTFO'd on twice, didn't they? And when was it in France?
France. It was France and I think a couple other
No, and
locations I forgot.
Holland
Yeah.
also. Holland. I mean, Holland is pretty hard EU rather, and they were BTFO'd that, and they really just blew it out of the fucking water. I forget the percentages, but it was pretty big. Yeah. Well, look. The EU has problems of its own, by the way, and this is the perfect opportunity to negotiate with these fuckers because Merkel is on the ropes.
Well, the only reason that a hard or a real Brexit may happen is one, the Theresa May government it looks like it's near collapse. Like I said, if Boris goes, it's over.
Yeah.
But the other added benefit, the gift that's in the hardliners' lap, is that the new country which has assumed the EU presidency is Austria. Austria, the hard right-wing coalition that's running Austria, is now in charge of the EU, and they're basically have made overtones to say we're going to reconsider some of the negotiation that has been going on with regard to Britain leaving the EU. Read between the lines is that hardliner shit that's saying fuck you Britain for even daring to insult us. That's going to be rethought,
right?
In theory.
Mm.
So she has that opportunity. Yeah, in theory,
because
things can happen.
That's assuming that Austria actually does get the position, right? Do you think that'll happen?
No, Austria will get the position. It's already been decided. The added element as well is Italy is firmly switched over, and Italy is we are going to secure this border, or we'll blow the whole fucking thing out. Italy will also be willing.
Yeah, the Italians are pretty xenophobic.
Sweden as well. I think the leading party in Sweden now is the basically fuck the immigrants party.
Okay,
that's coming about. Also, Alternative for Deutschland. Is now tied with these the SDP or the SDP, the Social Democrats,
right?
Socialists. So this whole confrontation within Merkel's government, she's just limping by. The EU is in theory on the ropes. Now, I would hope that someone firm, hard Brexiteers in the Conservative Party realize it's now or never, and force Theresa May out. That sounds like that may be what is going to happen because, like I said, there's already 3 ministers who announced they're getting the fuck out of Dodge for this. And it's hard and let me also put it this way. I have a feeling Boris might very well do the same because it would be very hard for him to save face after seeing his fellow ministers leave as a result of this.
Yeah. And also, I think that Boris would not be able to be the prime minister. I think that
no, it's not going to be Boris to be the prime minister. If there is a leadership election that's going to happen, it will invariably be Jacob, whether he wants it or not. It's going to have to be him, and they will go to him and say, "Well, look, there's nobody else in hard Brexit who's frankly untainted right now, save for you. And I know you want to wait till after Corbyn's kind of bought the farm, but frankly, not it's your responsibility to do so." And I think he would be impressed upon that.
You think he'd go for it?
I think if he is the Catholic thinking politician that he professes to be, then he has an obligation to do so. I think he's the type of man, like I said, the walking empire to a certain extent. If you impress upon him the idea that it is an obligation, given the extenuating circumstances that you have to be the leader, I think he would accept it. And if he doesn't, he never will be the leader.
Okay, because it's not going to be Michael Gove because nobody trusts him, right?
Like I said, all of the hard Brexiteers now are tainted in part because they had compromised with the government. This is their way of trying to absolve themselves of that, but they're not absolved enough to be the leader.
Right.
Only Jacob can be the leader right now.
Yeah, because Davis might be able to be, or no.
I think he's too tough because he's too tied to the negotiations.
Yeah,
it would be a manifestation of hey, I recognize that I failed, but when you recognize that you failed, it's hard to say. But now give me another shot, and I'll succeed. I have a feeling, like I said, it has to be Jacob or no one, frankly. Well, but like I said, the other possibility is that Boris really shames everyone, sticks around, and this government lips around with this shitty non-deal. that could happen too.
Well, I think that, look, I despise Boris Johnson because I think that he is willing to do anything to advance his position and advance his position and advance his power. And so I think that he would think to himself, yeah, if I drop out of the government, I won't be the next PM. And I won't be the next leader either. Therefore, for my benefit, I will stick with the Theresa May government and be the power behind the throne. And I think that that's the only that's the play that Boris Johnson would go for.
And I think it would be a disaster for all involved if that's what happened.
Oh yeah, but Boris Johnson has never really given a shit about other people so long as Boris is getting ahead. You know, I mean that's
Yeah,
that's
but even for
mentality.
Boris, I would say he would still not get ahead under those circumstances.
Why
Because
not?
think about it. He's, what are his options? If I leave the government now, I'm not going to be probably the next leader or PM.
Right.
But maybe, maybe it's an act of saving face with my peers, the hard Brexit peers, in saying that, this is the right decision. And eventually I can, reconstitute something. He sticks with Theresa May's government. Not only is her government going to only limp by for a few more years at best, they will lose the next election. Jeremy Corbyn will be the prime minister, and no one in their right minds will nominate Boris Johnson for the leadership of the party anyway, because it would be even more tainted. They said everybody else who had principles on the matter left this government as soon as we knew it was going to be a disaster. You stuck around for what obviously is your own personal interest. So what are you going to do, Boris? It's not a very good position either way for him, but it's worse if he stays.
No,
Because he would have offended every last person by staying.
I'm not so sure. It's that from his point of view, that's his only option to maintain power.
No, he's not going to maintain power either way. He's only going to maintain his position for however long the government has to last, which is not long.
No, the government is due for another election in 2022.
That's only if there's no vote. There isn't a vote of no confidence between now and then, and I guarantee you there will be several votes of no confidence between now and then.
Yeah. Well, that's very true. Oh man. But what's fun is that we're looking at their Brexit bonfire or dumpster fire or whatever you want to call it. But the EU, they have problems of their own. France was on fire the other day. That was pretty funny.
France is always on fire, isn't it?
No, yeah, the banlieues again. All the little brown people. Setting fire to everything in France. I mean, that was goddamn fucking funny. It was damn funny. Oh. Well, I introduced this topic, and I was going to hopscotch to some other topic, but let's cover this first. Because, well, did you follow the France thing, or you don't really give a shit? You figure that they're going down the tubes anyway, so fuck it.
I think I look at it this way: if France desires to be populated with a certain type of people who would be willing to burn down all of France, I say, you've made your own bed, you figure it out.
Well, the French have always been a people who have been willing to burn their own country down. I mean, they've done it a couple of times now, haven't they? But no, I think that it's so. Oh man, we've talked about this so many times. It's so goddamn sad to watch what's happening in Europe. That the whole goddamn thing is collapsing. That the cradle of our civilization, of our human civilization, is just committing suicide. It's just bizarre, and it leads me back to the whole Unwin theory that 100 years after a demographic cataclysm, you see the real effects of that demographic cataclysm. And I think back to World War I, where you had the cream of Europe murdering each other by the bushel. And 100 years later, to the nose, you're seeing the consequences. And it's just astonishing that Unwin was right. Unwin, Jesus Christ, he really knew what he was talking about. This whole notion that one, I forget the rationale of how he explained it, but he said that every single time, and he had a bunch of examples in Sex and Culture. I'm going to have to reread that to figure out the exact argument he had for that. But you remember that part or not really? Because I don't remember if you read the book or not.
Not in detail, no. But okay. I would also phrase it this way: there are details to suggest, he's not perfect on that. For example, like I think one of the great paths forward, or the countries leading the way in this extreme cucking situation, has always been Sweden, and Sweden didn't participate jack shit. in either of the either of the world wars. So there was no demographic disaster for Sweden that they had to confront, yet they still absorbed the fundamental ideas. So let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, well,
But
there's something else about Sweden. Did I ever tell you that whole issue about the Chilean quote unquote political refugees who went to Sweden in 1973?
I don't think you did.
Oh, okay. Okay, so in 73, there's a coup d'etat, right? The military overthrew the Salvador Allende government, the socialist government of Salvador Allende, right? And so the Swedes, fucking morons, they say that they publicly state that anybody who shows up at their embassy seeking political asylum will get political asylum, okay? And this is like an indefinite invitation. So, yeah, there are a few commies who took them up on the offer, but for the most part, you know who did? It was criminals. Like the criminal underclass of Chile. Like career thieves and burglars and such people. They
Right.
took them up on it. They went to the Swedish embassy and said, "Yeah, we're politically oppressed, what have you." And so the Swedes shipped them to Sweden, gave them jobs, gave them houses, gave them education, gave them a stipend, gave them everything. And these people proceeded to become a criminal underclass in Sweden. Okay, I mean, like in Sweden, for a couple of decades, if you were a Chilean, you were automatically considered a criminal. Okay, the Swedes, I swear to God, okay, this is a true thing. Although I don't have a picture of it, but there were pictures of signs in Swedish in supermarkets that said, if you see a Chilean stealing food, let them be. It's their culture. Okay, those are the signs. And Chileans, I mean, like middle class Chileans who would go to Sweden, they'd be horrified. They'd be like, "What the fuck is going on?" I mean, why does everybody treat me like a criminal automatically? Number one, and what the hell is going on here? And they had to be explained as to what was going on. And the Swedes imported tens of thousands of these people because it wasn't just the career criminal, it was also the career criminal's family, okay? And they would go there because these people were poor. They were criminals, but also, well, obviously, most career criminals are poor. And they would go to Sweden and had this great life, and they would just continue with what they were doing. And the Pinochet government had no real problem with it. He was just outsourcing his criminal underclass, exporting it.
You fucking deal with them.
Yeah,
This is what makes me laugh, because I've gotten into this fight with certain people on the right who are of the mindset that socialism or not isn't really the issue. We're okay with socialism if it's all white people. Just look at Sweden. And I'm laughing because I know for the longest time Sweden has always been in their current form been like, oh, whomever, come on in, we don't give a shit. So the idea that somehow there's this great whites only socialism that always loves the white nation is a fantasy. It's never really existed. There was a very brief period post World War II, which compromises were made between various political economic systems in order to avoid going down pure communism or a return to fascism per se. But that was Sweden gave in to the whole multicultural ethic a long time ago.
Yeah, and there's something else, of course, is that, see, in your own this notion that a whites only state would be like this paradise. Are you high? Because there's always been a white underclass. I mean, Whitey Bulger, what was he? He was practically descended from the Mayflowers, for crying out loud. He was a WASP, right? And he was a fucking criminal. Just because you happen to be of the same ethnic race as somebody else doesn't mean that they're going to be of the same social class as you. That's the thing of the ethno-nationalists do not understand it at all, and they're just so stupid about it. Something that, paradoxically, the multiculties understand. That if you come from a similar educational background, your race doesn't matter or is very secondary to that similar educational background, educational cultural background. Somebody like you and I, right? We don't have much in common with somebody who grew up in Appalachia. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody who grew up in Appalachia, but we don't have anything much to do with fucking travelers or something like that. I mean, come on, it's a class thing. It is not a racial thing.
Well, even independent of the classes defined by Marxism, the older identity for which governed Europe for the longest time was the aristocratic identity, which was essentially, yes, there were the king and the nobles who served around him, but they were peers and communicated very easily and well across their borders because they were all of the aristocratic class.
Exactly.
The idea of nationalism that we understand, yes, I understand tribalism exists prior to this, of course. And I still, like I have said before, I still think there is some element of truth to ethno-nationalism per se. But the notion of the nation that we think of is a product of all things, the French Revolution. It was the French Revolution who solidified what it meant to be French, the language, the ethics, everything. That was a product of them. And it's very much a 19th century phenomenon. All of these these words we're using and all of the elements around them, comes from that result of that fucking revolution. So let us keep in mind that this has been an evolving process.
Yeah, there's no question. In Europe, in the European continent, the borders were shall we call them flexible. Okay, it wasn't so clear cut as it is today, and there was no notion of the nation state like we define it now. I wonder how we're going to move forward. I wonder if this nation statehood thing is like a permanent. Let me ask you the following question as a thought experiment, okay? Because you and I are anti-multiculturalism. We are pro-nationalism, all the right-wing stuff. But let's contemplate the following notion. Suppose, let's just say for the sake of argument, that the multiculties, the borderless people, that's sort of like the future. What would such a world look like? Who would be the elites? Because there are always going to be elites in this world. So who would be the elites? How would that borderless system work? Because we've sort of seen that in Europe, the EU, and that didn't work out so well. But it seemed to me more a problem of the leadership structure that was not able to get its shit organized. You know what I mean? To be responsive to the popular will. I don't know. You see what I'm going for? I'm trying to figure out if there's a next stage.
Well, this is why the thought experiment is difficult, because you're trying to say in this thought experiment, if the fuck ups were resolved,
right,
how would it survive? But the problem is its very nature induces fuck ups. The best I could say is that if this perpetuates, what you will see is two layers of society kind of one floating over the other in a sort of air buffer zone of air, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be this. And it's kind of what we're seeing already. There will be a class starting around the upper middle class,
mm-hmm.
going into the wealthier class, that will have their own conceptions of what the world is. They will interact with people of different colors who still fundamentally act very similar. They share the same languages, go to the same restaurants.
Thai restaurants, I hope.
They will, Thai restaurants or whatever, how else will I need multiculturalism, because how else will I get shakshuka? I can't make, it's like, can't you make shakshuka? No, I need an Ethiopian to do it, to be authentic. That kind of thing. But needless to say, those worlds will be separated, and there will be a vast underbelly of people who are just living in the shit. And the best way I can describe it is Blade Runner got it right, which was essentially the well-to-do people don't go below floor 100.
Right.
And they're very much in their own towers, very much isolated, and everybody else is just living in a great morass of shit.
Right.
And that's how it would proceed if it were to continue at the end of the day. In fact, the follow-up to Blade Runner got something brilliant in it's a side feature to the movie. It's like a prequel where the antagonist, for lack of a better term, of the movie, who wants to reintroduce the replicants after they've been banned. He addresses the leadership of, I guess Los Angeles, whatever the city is, or maybe it's even the world, I don't know. And they got it perfectly, which is the ruling class or the new ruling order is represented by four people.
Mm-hmm.
A black woman, a woman, a black guy, an Asian guy, and a sickly cuck white man. I said, yep, because the idea was anybody who had the vitality or whatnot got the fuck off the planet and is living off world, but those who rule everything are basically like a cuck, a black guy, an Asian guy, and a woman. And I'm like, yep, that's pretty much how it's going to be. So on.
Well,
so
yeah,
forth,
but I'd venture to say that the Asians are going to get the fuck off planet too. I mean, well, you heard about the whole thing going down in Harvard, right? The whole lawsuit that the Asians are getting uppity and they don't like the fact that they have quotas, which is exactly the problem that the Jews faced back in the day. And now the Jews are ensconced in Harvard, and they're like, no, we don't want any more little Asian people, little slanty-eyed people who are going to take our slots. and they're all like, you hear about that? It's fucking funny as fuck.
Yeah, my response to that is like, let them fight each other, frankly, because like I said, I've seen way too many Asian Americans try to play the "we're a victim too" card. I'm like, you know what, you want to play that game? You go fight them for a while, see how much fun you fucking have. I want to see you guys fight each other out. I know you guys think each other is shit, are shit, and you really want to have it out with each other. Go ahead.
Who, Jews and Asians?
Jews, Asians, blacks, Indians, they don't like each other any more than they supposedly gathered together to hate us. So, let it fight it out. I don't care.
Well, I'm not one of you. I'm one of the brown people. I have vowels at the end of both my first and last name. I'm one of the little brown people. I'm going to be part of the revolution. I'm going to be part of the revolution.
This is why I have to admit to everybody, it's always a step down when I talk to you on this podcast.
Oh, God, yeah, you're talking to one of the little brown people. Yeah.
Yeah, I go out into the foyer and I breathe in the fucking dust that comes in with your and I realize, you see, I can still be salt of the earth if I want, and then I go back into my.
Let me just go at you just to put you in your place. Uni of Chicago, it's not an Ivy League.
No, it's the superior replacement to the Ivy League. I must admit.
Yeah, sure. You're whatever helps you sleep at night, sweetheart.
Oh, yes. Says the man who went to the bottom of the barrel Ivy Leagues.
No. The bottom of the barrel is UPenn or Cornell or Columbia. Those are the bottom of the barrel. Sorry. Oh God.
Sorry. UPenn and the Wharton School. Yeah, I think it's a step above.
It is. Tuck is better than Wharton. Anyway, no. In all seriousness, like this whole thing of like the slugging it out over the minorities, man. I figure is a great thing because it'll lead to the opening of the fissures of the whole multiculti thing. Because the Asians are starting to be identified with white people, and I don't think that the Asians are going to dig that. Not insofar as they care about being identified as white, but insofar as they care about being discriminated against. Because those little fuckers work too goddamn hard to just take it with a grin. You know what I'm saying? I think that the Asians are the ones who are going to break the whole multiculturalism thing. You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, like I said, they all act like they're still looking for their ways that they can benefit from it. I see nothing breaking it, frankly.
Well, okay, but going back to the original thought experiment, what would be the next post-national thing, if there would be such a thing? Because we agree. I mean, you and I agree on the fact that the whole notion of the nation state is really sort of like a late 18th, early 19th century development that really didn't exist. And I would go so far as to say, yeah, you're probably right that the French Revolution sort of like was the beginning of the end of that kind of cross-border aristocratic class, which had been the tradition of all the European states. And well, that's because of the church, because the church made sure that everybody was basically interrelated so that they'd be relatively easy to control, the political leadership, I mean. But what would be the next stage of political evolution?
Well, as I said, if you accept the multicultural belief as going to succeed, or it's going to perpetuate itself and it will replace.
No. It's a.
Then I don't understand your question. I have to admit.
Okay.
I don't know what you're getting at.
Because I see what you're saying, that there's going to be like a top class that's in charge of everything and a bottom shit pile, right? And no middle. I would venture to say we're sort of like seeing that now. But I'm wondering about the political organization. Is it going to be like sort of like 1984 where you're going to have like 3 big states or I don't know, 5 or half a dozen? What?
No, I mean, you'll just have various administrative zones, of which, it's effectively like little fiefdoms,
right?
That everybody kind of just floats in and out of. It's like, oh, you're going to go to this sector of the whatever, political arrangement you're at. Oh, shitty McShit shit is the, the governor general of that. So, pay lip service to him or her, or Zer, as the case may be, and then you're gonna just deal with it. That's how I envision that system kind of going. There could very well be an in zone and an out zone, as per usual. Even though liberalism thinks it's going to rule the world someday, there will always be countries that it has to ostracize, if not fight Russia being an example,
Iran,
uh,
yeah,
Iran, whomever it may be. It
yeah,
doesn't ultimately it won't really matter, as it didn't matter in the case of 1984. It was just whatever the case may be.
yeah. No, I
Presumably
see your point.
fictitious.
Because I'm also thinking that the notion of automation will increase this isolation of the elites and the masses. But I think that it's not going to be so. Or let me phrase it: it's going to be shitty for the populace, for the masses. Um, so long as two things are in place. Number one, there's some sort of drug to keep everybody happy, or a combination of drugs, like video games and actual narcotics and other amusements to just keep the masses pacified, number one. And number two, a clear mechanism by which some of the better people, the people naturally with more talents, can rise. Because I think that that's the key issue of our current society, that you have people who ordinarily would have been, I mean, like back in the past, people who were born today, but whom back in the past were not born of any kind of aristocratic parentage or anything like that. And so they had no opportunities, and those people would fester in the society. Today, even though it's very imperfect, you do have a system whereby the more talented people can rise. You can't consistently hear this, that of people who come from very bad backgrounds, very poor backgrounds, who by dint of effort and by playing the game and figuring out the game were able to rise. And this is consistent enough for us to recognize that it is a good system for advancing or helping, or not helping, it doesn't really help anybody, but for it's a good system whereby smart people can rise. Okay? Smart people, capable people, energetic people. And those people, instead of trying to revolt and overthrow the system, they figure out the rules of the system and use those rules to their advantage to get ahead, to eventually get to higher positions within that society, potentially even to the elite slots in the society, without having to do any kind of like major discovery or groundbreaking invention or something like that, of just by just going in the social slots. You see what I'm saying? Our society, our current society, the Western democracies, are very good at that. Or do you disagree?
I think there's some degree of success with that. I don't know that it's a de rigueur thing. I mean, I'm pretty sure every elite would love to say, look, we gathered up 12 people from the underclass and they did rather well and they are capable in this, that, or the other. I don't know that it's a truly systemic truth that someone from the bottom can always basically take a strong leadership position. I don't mean be successful and make a life for themselves. That I think happens in droves. But in terms of like if I were to say like there's one guy who like literally was just a shit kicker and then he went all the way to basically like a Bill Gates situation, rare, extraordinarily rare, highly unlikely,
Yeah, but
structurally
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying people who rose to a comfortable upper middle class.
Well, as I said, that happens in droves, but
Yeah.
that's not really changing the leadership of anything.
No,
That's just basically populating the upper middle class.
yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is that when you have a society that is able to do that, whether deliberately or by accident, okay, if you have a society that's able to do that consistently, then you take away the possibility of real revolution in that society.
Yes, in theory, but that's only a piece of a revolutionary event. A revolution is still motivated by the fact that people can't eat, or their fundamental needs are not met.
I completely agree. But a revolution, it is a necessary condition, not sufficient, but a necessary condition for a revolution to occur, to have a large swath of people who are completely disenfranchised from the society. Disenfranchised not merely politically, but socially, of not being able to advance, of the mechanisms by which there is social advancement to be closed to them. And we don't have that in our current society. On the contrary, we have lots of mechanisms by which a smart person can figure out, oh, if I do this, this, and that, I'll get ahead and I'll have a good life. And you yourself have admitted that we have droves of people who came from the very bottom echelons of our society who have risen to the top of middle class or upper middle class respectability. again, they weren't like some great sports star, or they didn't invent like, some cool new invention or some shit like that. They didn't found Facebook or Microsoft, right? Just average people who were, they were a little bit above average in terms of their intellect and their drive, and they were able to arrive at upper middle class respectability. We have those mechanisms, and therefore, wouldn't that be the source of any kind of revolution, like real revolution, apart from the issue of not having food?
I mean, partially it's true, but I mean, as again, historically, it's never been that clean cut. For example, a lot of the leaders of the Russian Revolution came from very well-to-do families, or at the very least, good respectable middle class backgrounds. Very much of the line of what you said. In the Russian Empire, you actually could see that happen. It happened quite a number of times. But Lenin and Trotsky, in particular, came from very respectable families that did well by themselves. And got better than what they were previously. So, shit can still happen.
Yeah.
But it's certainly partly an element of it. But I don't think it's as big as perhaps you're thinking.
Okay, but this isn't a very fruitful line of discussion. But okay, it was just a thought. Something random. You hear that Sargon got booted off of Twitter again? He lasted 3 days.
I saw that there was an account that looked like
it was his.
I guess it was what was it, Carl of Akkad or some goddamn thing, or something.
Carl of Akkad, yeah.
All right, yeah, I know he was there, and like a fart in the wind, it was gone before I had a chance to turn around and sniff.
Yeah, Word is that he got mass flagged. That everybody on like 8chan just like went to town on the guy and just mass flagged him, and just like, hey, look, internet, Jack Dorsey, look here, look who's back. Oh, that. If that's the case, which I have no reason to suspect, to not think, it's pretty goddamn funny if you think about it.
Well, yeah, it's like I said, the fights like this are going to happen, and I think it's humorous that our friend lasted 3 days. It would have been funnier, I suppose, by that logic, if it only was 2 days. But it is what it is, right? I'm sure, it's a minor bruising for him. He'll probably, do his typical, like, laughing it off to hide his anger on his whatever he's going to post on the matter, but he'll continue to do whatever he's doing. It'll be funny to see how all of this, to me, like, the only thing that'll matter with regard to the next stage of his life, career, what have you, is what happens when he starts doing in real life politics stuff, which he's committed to.
He started to. He did an interview with what's his name, Batten, the leader of the of UKIP, of the party he joined. Well, he seems to be really locked in, and we who thought that he'd get booted, apparently he did not get booted. What do you think of that?
It's just a sign, as I said at the time, that if that were the case, it's because the UKIP party, feels it has nothing to lose, which means that there's nothing really to it. And I think the next election, which, like I said, just given situation, is going to happen sooner than later. I think you're going to see, if UKIP does the same or frankly less, then, it was a waste of time. Frankly, all of this shenanigans that we were playing around with.
Yeah. I think that it's clear that he's locked in tight. He's not going anywhere. I would also venture to guess that the UKIP leadership probably just going to keep him on ice, because it's easier to just keep him on ice than to antagonize him by kicking him out. So just leave him on ice, and he's like a member, and get interviewed by him and so on, and just sort of like blow off anything that he has to say or anything that he wants to do in the party. That would be my thinking. You agree?
Possibly. I mean, I can believe that. I mean, here's my ultimate conclusion from everything that I've seen, given the, the past month or so with regard to this party, or month is too generous, or, too
just weeks. Yeah.
This past years, even I've seen with that party. I think ever since Nigel left, frankly, it's been a party without purpose. And I think it continues to express that fact. Whether or not, a leader expresses some ideas that seem compelling, it does not demonstrate itself as compelling enough to move the nation in any serious regard. So, like I said, to my mind, the next election's make or break. And if they don't even if it's a minor step up from where they were, if they don't even get that, or if they just hold on to what they are, there'll never be anything of note, of viability. And this whole game of saying, oh, the youngins bringing people to UKIP, that'll make a difference. Yeah, if that doesn't happen in the next election, it ain't ever going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's my attitude towards it. All of the little inter-party fighting, ultimately, in my mind, as I thought about this ever since we started discussing it, I thought it gives too much credit to the situation to say that all of these inter-party dramas mean something of important. It would mean something if it was like the Conservative Party and this determines what the fate of the nation was going to be. I really don't see anything happening in regard to that party to say that the fate of the nation depends on whether or not Sargon is in or out.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that there's nothing at play, especially because the number of members joining it was not very high, and also the fact that these guys do not have mainstream youth appeal. Not at all, because I don't think that many young people would identify with somebody like Dankula, whom I like. I actually met him the other day on a stream. Nice fella. I have no problem with the guy. I was on the Common Sense guy's stream, and it felt kind of like I got sandbagged a little bit. It was a little bit kind of weird, but okay, fine. And the guy showed up, seemed very nice, very personable, and I liked him on a personal level. Politically, I think he's too weird looking. I don't think that many young people would go for him, considering what young people usually go for, he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who would inspire political allegiance among the young. But that's just me, I mean, what am I? I'm not in politics. He didn't, but that was my impression. What do you think?
Well, personal matters aside, because like I said, each and every one of these guys, say for one or two, I think, yeah, there's something compelling about them, on a personal level. But I would suggest the audience consider this. Earlier in this, what did we start this podcast with? The rivalries within the Theresa May government.
Right.
These are movements within a party that actually make a difference. You can actually see, as we've talked through, how it means, what the nation's actually going to do, what it's not going to do, how an election will turn out, how it will not turn out. Compare the tone and the direction and the concern we had in that discussion to whether Sargon could interview Jorah Batten or not.
Yeah.
Whether Dankula should have one less piercing or one more piercing.
I vote more.
I mean, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like I'm taking a shit on the guys. I guess maybe a little bit.
No, but you're basically saying it's politically,
it's not a personal matter. Yeah. That's the point. You could tell the difference immediately.
Yeah. I guess I think it's the product of the community, the YouTube community, that you wind up, smelling each other's farts and thinking that it's a lot bigger deal than it actually is. And it's just a tiny little microscopic environment that means absolutely nothing in the wider scheme of things. Because even if you do have the big numbers and so our subscribers are concerned, those big numbers on subscribers, it's just clicking to become a subscriber. You're not going out there to march for any fucking thing. And we've seen how these big online communities, when the shit hits a fan, or let me rephrase that, when the rubber meets the road, to change my cliche, when the rubber meets the road, they don't show up. You can have 1 million subs and you'll get maybe, a couple of thousand people show up at some live event, and no matter how much you bang the drum on it, and insofar as like any kind of real political impact, I think most subscribers basically could say, well, yeah, you're my entertainment, but I'm not going to listen to you insofar as how I'm going to vote or what I'm going to do or what political activism I'm going to engage in. So, yeah. So, that, what?
And this is, I think what's interesting about this is the case you have to account for, right, is what I imagine they're all thinking in the back of their heads, like, well, Trump came from nowhere and he became president. And my response is, the man didn't come from nowhere. He spent 30 years building a personality and a population base who supports him enough so that it could be conceivable that it would happen. And that's how it was successful. None of you have ever built anywhere near a multi-billion-dollar empire, have been on reality television shows for that long, have made a name for yourself. Honest to God, starting in the 70s, going through 2016, add up all the years it took to do that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people in our side and even beyond our size, but like who occupy the social media realm, think, well, if Trump could do it, I can do it. And it says, well, you're missing a lot of the details that went into that, my friend.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. I guess my blindness to Trump has to do with the fact that I never really liked his personality. I just thought he was just a blowhard. Okay, and so I've consistently misjudged him in terms of his effectiveness, because the times that I have paid attention to him was when he was going bankrupt. I mean, for me, the big memory in my head is when he went bankrupt, belly up on the whole Atlantic City casino thing, and a few signifiers or little signs along the way that signaled to me that this wasn't a guy to take seriously. Like, for instance, when he got roasted on some show that was roasting celebrities, he insisted that nobody make fun of his net worth or how rich he was, which I find weird. Somebody like Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, they're not going to care if people, make fun or question how rich they actually are. The only person who would worry about that is somebody who's actually not rich, or not as rich as they claim to be. So I always thought to myself of that insofar as Trump is concerned. Does this make sense to you? I mean, do you agree?
No, well, yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, I remember hearing about his bankruptcies after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time he was entering my consciousness, it was frankly around the celebrity status, and at the time, I was not, and to this day, I'm not really into reality TV that much, save for one program I'm embarrassed to admit I watch. But needless to say,
okay, which one?
I will get to that later in the podcast to add a little spice to everything. But at the time, I was like, this isn't, he doesn't seem to be my, bag of tea or whatever. And then, over the time when he started running and he started doing his successful skewering of people who deserved it, then I said, okay, his personality grew on me. But up till then, I wasn't personally invested in him one way or the other. I think to a certain extent, yeah, you're right. I mean, anybody who went through a bankruptcy like that, regardless of whether or not they came out all right at the end, which I think ultimately he did.
Mm-hmm.
But when you've gone through that, I can envision him being sensitive to that. I mean, the guy is a very sensitive fellow, which sometimes he uses to his benefit, sometimes he uses to his detriment. To his benefit, I said, when he, if he gets hit, he fights back. Actually, has a lot of benefit to it. I think it's a detriment when he's overtly sensitive to things that are being used precisely because they know he'll be overly sensitive to it. Uses emotions against him. I think sometimes that's when they attack him smartly, they do it that way. Other times he just gives back, like when John McCain started attacking him, whatever, and he says, "Oh, I like my war veterans, to not been captured or what have you," which I thought was humorous, but that's because I'm a cruel son of a bitch. All right, so for dramatic purposes, what is the reality show that I've been watching shamelessly recently? It's Below Deck. Below Deck is the show where a yacht is chartered and people below deck, it's basically upstairs and downstairs upstairs downstairs, the TV show from Britain, the elites on top and then all the people who are working below. Yeah. It's on a boat, but it's a reality show, and it's always fake drama about some well-to-do son of a bitch lawyer from Philadelphia is like, I'm on a boat in the middle of Greece, the GNC, but I can't get a satellite hookup to watch the Eagles play, and I've never missed a football game. It's like, this man, people like that remind me why revolutions occur and why people are okay.
I was going to say that,
to kill the aristocrats.
Yeah.
So that's so it's really off tangent from this conversation, but if people feel the need to say, is Benway a human on some level, like, well, here's an example of I might be a human on some level.
But you hate watch it. You're basically looking to see how the upscale bourgeois make fools of themselves or say hateful things.
Well, that's the only way anybody ever watches reality TV. You pick something that you hate and then you root against it.
It sounds so much like it's the 2 minutes of hate. It's the 2 minutes of hate, for crying out loud.
But that is the fundamental logic of reality TV. Pick any TV show, whether it's a contest or not. There's always some fucker you say, oh, I hate him, I hope he loses. And I see this other person, it's like, oh, I hope they beat him or something. It's like, or even whatever that show was from all those years ago, Jersey Shore with the troglodyte, it's Snooky or Snorky or however you
Snooky,
wanted to
yeah, she
pronounce
was
their
this
name.
this.
Yeah, everybody was just saying like, oh, I hope that that troll gets trips on a infested needle at the Jersey beach, and then you see
Gets
her like
AIDS and God
or
knows what.
ground into sausage meat or something, whatever, things like that. That's how it ends. That's how reality TV show ends. And ultimately, sometimes you get an interesting president to come out.
Yeah, but that's kind of fucking insane. And also, what's weird is that see, everybody and his kid brother is deciding that, well, shit, I've been on a reality show. Maybe I could be president because they're talking about Mark Cuban. Who else are they talking about of running for president? Like fucking the lawyer for Stormy Daniels announced that he's going to run for president. It's
Oh,
fucking insane.
the other thing everybody's been very excited again, and I have to admit, I've been enjoying the idea. Someone was saying, I don't even know how these rumors got started, but there's hints that Hillary is getting ready for 2020.
Oh, I heard that. That can't be true. That's got to be a troll. That cannot
I,
be true.
it's so stupid that it must be false, or it's so stupid that it must be true. It's like it's no in between zone. Here obviously, one would think it's an either or game, but there is that some, in the world we live in, there's a big gray middle zone. But this is one thing where it's absolutely not in the middle. Either this is a complete troll or she's fucking insane. There's no in between.
But yeah, I think that she probably does want to run because I think that she realizes that only the promise of her actually being president gives her any power. Now that she will never be president or is perceived as never being the president, there is no point. You see what I'm saying?
Well, here's the thing. I remember hearing this exact kind of thinking around 2004, basically saying Al Gore should come back and run again. Why? Because Al Gore could say, well, I really won the popular vote, but I was cheated
Oh
because of
God, yeah.
judges on the court, and he can come back and say, yo, wouldn't you, campaign on the idea that but for George Bush, I would have been president. It would have been such a better world. That never came about to anything. So it could very well be the same thing with Hillary Clinton.
Actually, I disagree because Al Gore was never that ambitious, but Hillary and Bill, and I think they're fucking terrified that the DOJ will really crack down on them and their foundation and all their shenanigans. I mean, look, these are fucking Arkansas low life payola politicians, and they imported that whole mentality to Washington D.C. Did you hear about the Anwan brothers? The whole Debbie Wasserman Schultz thing that they got to walk.
Well, there was some sort of plea deal, is all I heard, and I was surprised by that. But and I think I agree with others who said, like, if this is the output of the DOJ leadership, then yeah, Jeff Sessions, it's time for you to walk.
Yeah,
because that should have been served on a silver platter. Shit like that always. I was not surprised. Let's put it this way. I have given up I've long given up hope that Hillary, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, any of that kind of old guard Democratic leadership class is going to answer to anything. And as to your question of like, is Hillary, but Hillary Clinton is more ambitious than Al Gore. Yes, Hillary Clinton has the comparative advantage to Al Gore on ambitiousness. But funny enough, Al Gore had the comparative advantage to Hillary Clinton on success. By that, I mean,
yeah,
at the very least, he ran as a vice president in 2 successive tickets.
Yeah,
that won. At least he won an Oscar. All that kind of shit.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, on the whole thing. Oh, you heard that climate guy, the guy who made the big hullabaloo, 30 years ago, and it turns out that everything he said turned out to be bullshit.
I've seen many versions of that, of like people comparing the various climate doomsday scenarios from decades past and how it evolved. There was a period when they said, extreme global cooling was likely to be the result of severe climate, outputs of human production or what have you. There was a period when they said the ozone would be completely gone. There was a period when they said, all this, that, and the other would happen. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't take you too much effort to look back and see all the variations on how the doomsday scenarios didn't come about to this. My response is like humans will figure out another way to create a doomsday scenario, and usually it will be socially produced as opposed to industrially produced. Let's put it that way.
Well, no, but I find just like okay, just to tidy up the whole Hillary Clinton thing. See, there was a day back in the day when a politician lost, he would go away and stay gone. Okay, why can't Hillary do that? Because it's been like a fucking almost 2 years now, a year and a half, almost 2 years. It's been about 20 months since she lost the election. Why can't she just go away forever? Just be gone forever. Just, find some desert island where there's no internet and nothing like that, just a stack of books, and just live out her life. Maybe like a Club Med somewhere that the U.S. government could buy up a Club Med in the middle of the Pacific, set it up just for her and Bill, and they could eat to their heart's content and read whatever book they want and watch whatever rerun of any show that they want, and they're incommunicado. It's like they're Saint Helena, They're what was the name of the island where Napoleon eventually died?
Well, there were two.
Yeah, it was not Saint Helena.
He was first on Elba, and then he was on He died on Saint Helena.
Okay, Saint Helena. Let's make one for the Clintons. We could reuse Saint Helena, for crying out loud. Okay, I mean, just like leave them there because I'm sick of them. In my political imagination is sick and tired of them. I need new blood. I need Ocasio-Cortez. Oh man.
Well, here's the thing. You have to be conscientious of. We like Nixon. Nixon didn't go away. Nixon had a little quiet period.
Right, in
the
the 60s.
Yeah. Immediately after 60, he ran for governor of California in 62.
You will never have Nixon to kick around anymore.
And then 6 years later, he was president.
And they had him around to kick around a little bit more.
And then he was kicked around for another 6 years.
Yeah.
But I just want to remind us to be fair to a guy we like, that he did the same thing. Unfortunately for Hillary Clinton, like I said, she, at least Nixon was a very powerful vice president for 8 years before he did that.
Because Nixon was a real politician, a man you could respect. Eisenhower wanted to dump him all the fucking time, and he held on by his fucking fingernails. The Chequers speech, right? Mm-hmm. Nixon was a great politician. Yeah, he could have been awkward, this and that, the other, but he was a great politician, and he could win over people. I read the book that David Frost wrote about his interviews with Nixon. It was like a companion book, and it was really interesting because David Frost said that when they were setting up for the interviews and stuff like that, there were a lot of stagehands, workers, people behind the cameras setting stuff up, and David Frost was amazed that Nixon, sort of like at first seemingly awkwardly, established a real rapport with the people behind the camera. And he was shocked by it. It was something that he had not anticipated. Because there was the Nixon awkwardness, because he was famously awkward, right? But he connected. And that was what David Frost, remarked upon and thought was just incredible, that Nixon did connect with the working class people in a way that was very strong, and even in a casual setting like that. I mean, it's or a casual situation like that. It wasn't like an actual campaign stop, and he wasn't obviously not running for anything in that moment. It's
well. The funny thing is, you can to this day see a little bit of it. There was some footage that you can find on YouTube from CNN when back, I think it's in the early '90s, late '80s, when Pat Buchanan's chatting with Nixon on one of the shows they were being interviewed for, and you see them, well, it's not off camera, you see them, but it's like between takes, and they're just jovially chatting about this, that, and the other. And Nixon, they even say like Nixon's swearing. He doesn't really say anything. He said, "Did you read that Cairo book or whatever book on Lyndon Johnson? He just came across like a goddamn animal," kind of thing about like his sex, imbroglios. But you could see it in there that Nixon just had a gift for just, when it's all settled down, I can talk like a normal human being.
Yeah.
And using vernacular that any average son of a bitch could understand very easily. And Buchanan does it too.
Yeah.
Both of them are peas in a pod on that regard. I miss them both.
Yeah. Well, Buchanan's still alive, isn't he?
Buchanan's still alive, but you don't, outside of like the McLaughlin group, you don't really see him.
No, of course not. He's persona non grata now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on that cheery note, we're going to call it a podcast. So I just want to thank you all for listening to us. This has been the Coach and Benway podcast. I'm Coach Red Pill with my co-host, Dr. Benway. Dr. Benway, would you like to have the final say of this podcast?
I want everybody to find the nearest petition they can find that says "Get Hillary Clinton to run for president in 2020," and I want you to sign it.
I second that.
I want you to write, Hillary, run, baby, run.
Yes.
And then buy some T-shirts so she feels confident.
Yes, I completely agree. And actually, I'm going to tweet it out right now. Yes, Hillary, if you're listening to us, please run. We need the lulls.
Works for me.